Most people complain of being ignored, disrespected, or treated as insignificant. But the true reason lies not in the world. It lies within. If you do not respect yourself, why should anyone else? In this lesson, you will discover how self-respect forces the world to bow without a single word spoken. Respect is not just a feeling. It is not merely a polite bow, a handshake, or a word of acknowledgement. Respect is the very foundation of authority. Machiavelli would remind us that before you can rule over others, you must first rule over yourself. And what does ruling over yourself mean? It means carrying yourself in such a way that no man, no woman, no rival, and no ally can ever doubt that you believe in your own worth. Look at history. Kings without armies have still commanded loyalty because their presence alone demanded reverence. At the same time, there were rulers with vast treasuries and legions of soldiers who crumbled because they lacked the iron dignity that forces men to obey without hesitation. This is the paradox of power, wealth, position. Even influence will betray you if the one who holds them does not respect himself. People are not blind. They sense weakness like wolves scent blood. If you carry yourself with hesitation, if you move as though you are uncertain of your value, the world will treat you as disposable. But when you respect yourself, everything changes. Your voice carries weight, even when you speak softly. Your silence becomes a wall that others cannot ignore. In every word you choose, in every step you take, there is an invisible command that says, I am not here to beg, I am not here to chase, I am not here to prove, I am here to be obeyed. Most people live the other way around. They believe that respect comes from others first, and only then will they respect themselves. They wait for approval, applause, or permission to believe in their own value. This is the mistake of the weak. The truth is the opposite. Respect must begin within. You must carry it inside you before the world reflects it back. Otherwise, you will spend your life as a beggar of recognition, constantly chasing what will never stay in your grasp. Think of the great leaders of Florence, of Rome, of empires that stretched across continents. They did not walk into a room and ask for recognition. They walked in, and their presence demanded it. How? Because they had mastered themselves. Their posture was upright, their eyes unflinching, their decisions firm. They respected themselves so completely that even their enemies acknowledged it. Respect became their first currency, and from it flowed wealth, loyalty, and fear. Self-respect is not arrogance. Arrogance is hollow, it is the noise of the insecure. True self-respect is quiet but unshakable. It is the calm certainty that you will not be bent, that you will not bow unless it serves your interest, and that you cannot be bribed by cheap approval. When others see this, they cannot help but measure themselves against you, and in that moment, they place you above them. But here lies the cruel truth. If you lack self-respect, no one will give it to you. No amount of kindness will buy it. No amount of pleading will create it. In fact, the more you seek it from others, the less they give it. Why? Because begging for respect is a contradiction. To ask for it is to admit you do not possess it. And once that is revealed, the crowd treats you as prey. They will ignore you, use you, mock you, and discard you, because they know you lack the one thing that cannot be faked. Respect is the invisible crown that rests upon your head long before any throne is given to you. It is the aura that makes others hesitate before they speak to you. It is the pause in their voice, the subtle lowering of their eyes, the carefulness in their words, because they know instinctively that you are not someone to be trifled with. And this crown, this currency, is forged by how you treat yourself when no one is watching. Do you allow yourself to tolerate disrespect in silence? Do you excuse the small insults because you fear confrontation? Do you diminish your own achievements so others feel comfortable? Every time you do this, you lower your own value. You tell the world, I do not respect myself enough to demand better, and the world listens. On the other hand, when you stand firm, when you do not allow even the smallest disrespect to pass without correction, when you speak with clarity instead of begging for understanding, something shifts. People begin to calculate differently around you. They measure their words, they test their actions, because they know the cost of losing your respect is too great. This is how authority is born, not from titles, not from wealth, but from the first currency, respect. Boundaries are not walls of stone or lines on the ground. They are invisible laws, written not on paper, but carved into the way you treat yourself. Machiavelli understood this better than most. The man who cannot draw boundaries is already conquered. For what is a prince? What is a leader? What is even a man, if anyone may step upon him without consequence? To respect yourself is to set limits. It is to say, this I will allow, and this I will never permit. Boundaries are the silent guardians of your dignity. They whisper to the world, approach with care, for here stands someone who will not bend easily. And when people know your boundaries, they are forced to behave with a certain fear and, at the same time, with admiration. Why fear? Because when you enforce your boundaries, you reveal a truth most men and women hide from. You show that you are willing to lose rather than be disrespected. The weak fear loss, but the strong embrace it. And when the world realizes you will cut ties, walk away, or punish disobedience rather than accept dishonor, they hesitate. They pause. They measure every step around you, for they know you are not desperate enough to tolerate insult. Fear arises not because you are cruel, but because you are unshakable. And why admiration? Because most people wish they had the strength to do the same. They admire the man who does not flinch when pressured, the one who does not bend under the weight of public opinion, the one who can say no when everyone else trembles to speak. Boundaries separate you from the crowd. They make you untouchable in a world of people who constantly compromise their worth just to be liked. Consider this: a ruler who lets his advisors interrupt, question, and undermine him without correction soon loses authority. At first, the people test him with small breaches, a delayed response, a careless word, a subtle act of disobedience. If these are ignored, they grow bolder. What begins as small insolence becomes open disrespect, and soon his crown is little more than an ornament. But the ruler who stops such insolence at its root commands loyalty, for his firmness creates an atmosphere where his word is law. The same principle applies to you. If you permit small violations of your boundaries, you invite greater ones. Many deceive themselves into thinking that tolerance wins love. They believe that if they are endlessly patient, endlessly forgiving, endlessly understanding, they will be cherished. But Machiavelli knew better. Excessive tolerance breeds contempt. The more you allow, the less value you hold. What begins as kindness becomes weakness in the eyes of others. People do not admire those who bow too easily, they use them. They do not cherish those who tolerate insult, they despise them. Boundaries are what stop this slow decay of respect. Yet setting boundaries is not enough. They must be enforced. A law that is never punished is no law at all. And so it is with the boundaries you draw. If someone crosses them and you look the other way, you announce to the world that your word is empty. But if you respond swiftly, if you show that every breach carries consequence, then your boundaries are transformed into pillars of authority. Think of it as fire. A small flame left unattended can burn down a palace. The wise ruler never ignores the spark of insolence, for it will consume his authority if unchecked. But when he stamps it out quickly, the fire serves him. It provides light, warmth, and loyalty. Your boundaries are that flame. Guard them fiercely, and others will respect the heat they radiate. And here lies another truth: boundaries are not only defense, they are offense. They do not merely keep people from taking advantage of you, they actively elevate your status. When you make it clear what you will and will not allow, people admire your certainty. They may not love you, but they will respect you. And respect is worth far more than love in the realm of power. Most people cannot define their own boundaries because they fear rejection. They fear losing friends, partners, opportunities. But in clinging to everything, they lose the most important thing of all, their dignity. Machiavelli would say it is far better to lose the approval of the many than to live without self-respect. For once you lose respect, even your closest allies will turn against you, because no one admires a man who cannot admire himself enough to set limits. Boundaries are also a test, both for you and for those around you. They test whether you are strong enough to stand by your principles, and they test whether others are worthy to remain in your presence. Those who respect your limits prove themselves loyal. Those who do not expose their true nature. In this way, boundaries cleanse your circle of the weak and the treacherous, leaving only those who value your strength. To set boundaries is to declare, my respect cannot be bought, my loyalty cannot be exploited, and my dignity cannot be compromised. The crowd may not always like this, but they will obey it. For deep inside, even the most rebellious soul craves a figure who does not bend. Boundaries turn you into that figure. The one who is feared, the one who is admired, the one whose presence cannot be ignored. The world does not see the truth. The world sees what you allow it to see. Machiavelli understood this bitter fact: reality is not what exists, but what appears to exist. Men and women are guided by perception far more than by reason. If you look powerful, you will be treated as powerful. If you look weak, no matter what you possess, you will be treated as weak. This is why appearance is not decoration. It is strategy. It is the armor of influence, the cloak of authority, the mask that convinces the world to bow. Do not mistake this for vanity. It is not about clothing or wealth alone. It is about the way you project yourself in every movement, every word, every silence. Your posture, your eyes, your tone. These are signals, and the crowd reads them instantly, often without realizing. From these signals, they construct an image of who you are. That image becomes your reality in their minds, and once fixed, it shapes how they treat you. Consider a man of great knowledge who presents himself timidly, stumbling over his words, bowing his head, eager to please. His wisdom may be vast, but the world will see him as lesser. Now consider a man of mediocre skill who stands upright, speaks with clarity, and moves as though every step is chosen with purpose. His reality may be hollow, but his appearance makes him seem greater. And so the crowd obeys the second man, not the first. This is the cruelty of perception. It does not care about truth. It only cares about what is visible. A ruler, Machiavelli observed, must often seem virtuous even when he is not. Why? Because men judge with their eyes before they judge with their minds. If a prince appears generous, merciful, and just, then even if he is ruthless in private, his appearance protects him. The masses rarely see his actions closely enough to judge them accurately. They see only the surface, and so it is with you. The image you project becomes the truth the world believes. This is why self-respect, which lives within, must always radiate outward as appearance. If you carry yourself as though you are unworthy, if you act as though you are small, the world will never look deeper to see your strength. They will dismiss you at once. But if you appear confident, composed, and immovable, the world assumes you possess power, even before you prove it. Appearance plants the seed of reality in their minds, and once it takes root, they obey it. Understand, this appearance is not deception. It is selection. It is the art of choosing what you reveal and what you conceal. Reveal strength, conceal doubt. Reveal clarity, conceal hesitation. Reveal composure, conceal chaos. The masses are too distracted, too impatient, too blind to see the whole truth. They see only fragments, and from those fragments, they build their reality of you. If you control the fragments, you control their reality. Even silence has appearance. The man who talks endlessly, explaining himself, justifying every action, begging for understanding, appears weak no matter what words he speaks. The man who speaks little, who allows silence to stretch and forces others to fill it, appears strong. His silence becomes an image of certainty, and certainty is always mistaken for strength. Thus, even the absence of words becomes part of the appearance that shapes reality. In courts and kingdoms, appearance has toppled rulers and raised pretenders to thrones. A noble who looked decisive could seize power even when unprepared. A king who appeared hesitant lost loyalty even when capable. The crowd does not test the substance. They follow the shadow. They bow to the mask. They obey the illusion. This is why Machiavelli insisted it is not necessary to be good. It is only necessary to appear good. Not because morality is worthless, but because appearance is the language the world understands. In your own life, appearance shapes the respect you receive. Walk into a room as if you are uncertain of your place, and the world will place you at the bottom. Walk in as though the room already belongs to you, and they will treat you as though it does. Carry yourself with hesitation, and you invite domination. Carry yourself with dignity, and you invite obedience. The truth may not match the appearance, but in the eyes of others, the appearance is the truth. And here lies the essence of control. You may not always command reality, but you can command appearance. And by commanding appearance, you guide the world's perception. And by guiding perception, you dictate reality itself. Respect is never won by begging. A man who kneels for recognition will never rise above those he kneels to. Machiavelli understood this with ruthless clarity. The world does not give respect to the one who asks for it, but to the one who demands it through strength, through presence, through action. The weak spend their lives chasing approval. The strong, without asking, are obeyed. Watch how the weak behave. They explain themselves endlessly, hoping their words will buy understanding. They stretch their hands outward, begging to be seen, begging to be heard, begging to be accepted. They confuse kindness for strength, tolerance for value, and humility for respect. Yet the more they plead, the more invisible they become. Why? Because begging signals dependence. It tells the world that you have no power of your own, that you need others to grant you worth. And once the world knows this, it strips you of dignity. Now look at the strong. The strong do not justify themselves to everyone. They do not chase approval like a starving man chases bread. Their worth is self-declared, and their actions are their evidence. They command, not because they scream, but because their silence carries authority. They do not beg for attention. Attention bends toward them. They do not plead for recognition. The crowd recognizes them because it fears the cost of ignoring them. This is the cold truth. The world has no patience for the weak because weakness offers nothing of value. The weak give away their power in hopes of earning scraps of validation. But the strong know that validation is worthless compared to command. And command does not come from asking. It comes from making others feel that not obeying you would be dangerous. Consider the prince who spends his reign begging his subjects for loyalty. He hosts endless feasts, gives away wealth, lowers himself to flatter the crowd, and still they mock him behind his back. Why? Because he has shown that their favor is more important than his authority. His generosity becomes weakness, his humility becomes submission, and his rule becomes fragile. Now consider the prince who does not beg. He enforces his will. He rewards loyalty but punishes disobedience. He does not plead for love. He commands respect. And though the people may whisper against him, when he speaks, they obey. Even in ordinary life, the principle is the same. The man who asks constantly to be included, who explains his every choice, who lowers himself to avoid confrontation, this man becomes invisible. His presence is tolerated, not respected. But the man who respects himself enough to stand firm, who does not chase approval, who can say no without flinching, this man becomes magnetic. People may not always like him, but they cannot ignore him. His strength makes them pay attention, even when they wish not to. Machiavelli would tell you that weakness is a sin against power. The weak are consumed because they signal to predators that they will not fight back. The strong survive and rise because they make it clear that to cross them is to invite consequence. And this difference begins with the way one approaches respect. The weak ask for it as though it were charity. The strong embody it until it is undeniable. Do not confuse command with arrogance. Arrogance is noise, and noise is the mask of insecurity. True command is quiet. It does not announce itself, does not shout for attention. It exists in posture, in silence, in the certainty that obedience will follow without explanation. The strong know this, and they cultivate it. When they walk into a room, they do not scramble to be noticed. The room notices them. The tragedy is that most people live as beggars, even when they do not realize it. They beg by over-explaining. They beg by tolerating disrespect. They beg by adjusting themselves constantly to please everyone around them. And in doing so, they become slaves to the opinions of others. Their lives are spent in chains, not because anyone forced them, but because they handed over their power voluntarily. The strong, on the other hand, refuse to beg. They know that if respect is not given freely in response to strength, it is not worth having. They are willing to lose approval, to walk away, to be disliked, because they understand that true respect cannot be negotiated. It must be commanded. And once it is commanded, it becomes the foundation of all influence, all loyalty, all fear, and all obedience. There is no greater trap for a leader, for a thinker, for any man of ambition, than the hunger for universal approval. The desire to be loved by all is a disease of the weak. It enslaves them to the crowd. Machiavelli's wisdom cuts like a knife here. The one who seeks to please everyone ends by pleasing no one. To rule, to command, to even be respected, you must be willing to lose the affection of the masses and stand apart. The crowd is fickle. One day it cheers you, the next it condemns you. Its love is shallow, its loyalty temporary. Those who tie their worth to the applause of the many build their lives on sand. The moment the tide changes, they are swept away. But the man who is willing to sacrifice approval, who accepts that he cannot and should not be loved by all, builds his authority on stone. For he does not lean on the shifting moods of others. He stands firm on his own strength. Look closely at history. The rulers who endured were not the ones who bent to the will of the mob. They were the ones who stood against it. The Roman emperors who sought constant approval found themselves assassinated by the same people who once praised them. Meanwhile, the emperors who ruled with firmness, who did not bend for the sake of popularity, were feared and obeyed. They may not have been loved, but they were remembered. Love fades, fear endures. Respect lasts, and this applies not only to thrones and crowns, but to every life. The man who chases popularity at work, who bends himself to fit the expectations of friends, who molds his every word to avoid disapproval, becomes hollow. He loses himself in the endless performance of pleasing others. And in the end, no one respects him. He is admired for nothing, remembered for nothing, valued for nothing. But the one who has the courage to sacrifice approval, the one who says, "I will not bend just to be liked," this man gains something far greater. He gains respect. Respect does not come from being agreeable. It comes from being unshakable. The world admires those who are willing to stand alone, even against mockery, even against hatred, even against exile. Why? Because most men cannot do it. Most men crave the safety of the herd. They would rather be slaves to the opinion of the many than masters of themselves. But the rare man who resists this temptation shines like iron against wood. He becomes the standard by which others measure themselves, even if they resent him for it. Machiavelli observed that it is better to be feared than loved, if one cannot be both. But the deeper lesson here is that love is weak if it comes at the cost of authority. If people admire you only because you bend to their demands, then their admiration is worthless. It vanishes the moment you stop bending. But when people respect you because you hold firm, because you do not sell your dignity for cheap approval, then even those who dislike you cannot ignore you. They may curse you with their lips, but they obey you with their actions. Sacrificing approval means accepting isolation. It means walking away from the safety of being liked and entering the danger of being different. It means refusing to join the chorus of weak voices just to avoid standing out. And yet, this very isolation is what creates power. The man who stands apart becomes visible. The man who stands firm becomes untouchable. The man who dares to say no when everyone else says yes commands attention, even from those who despise him. Do not confuse this with recklessness. To reject approval does not mean to antagonize without reason. It means you choose respect over affection. It means you would rather lose friends than lose dignity. It means you would rather be hated for strength than loved for weakness. This is the true price of authority, and those who are unwilling to pay it remain forever beneath those who are. The approval of the many is cheap because it is given freely, easily, and without thought. But respect, real respect, comes with cost. It requires sacrifice. It requires the willingness to let go of comfort, to endure criticism, to face resistance without flinching. And in the end, those who dared to sacrifice approval are the ones the world obeys. For the crowd may laugh today, but tomorrow it will kneel before the man it once mocked, because strength has a gravity that no one can resist. There is a power in silence that words can never reach. Machiavelli understood that the man who respects himself does not need to waste his breath begging, justifying, or explaining. His silence speaks louder than the desperate speeches of the weak. The world hears it, feels it, and bends beneath its weight. For silence, when wielded by one who respects himself, is not emptiness. It is presence. It is command. The weak cannot remain silent. They are terrified of it. The moment tension arises, they rush to fill the air with words. They explain themselves endlessly, as though drowning the room with excuses will earn them dignity. But every word reveals insecurity. Every explanation uncovers a lack of authority. And the more they talk, the more invisible they become. The desperate cling to words because they do not believe their presence alone is enough. But the strong, those who carry self-respect in their bones, understand that silence is often the sharpest blade. When you do not rush to respond, when you allow pauses to stretch, when you refuse to justify yourself, the world begins to wonder. Why is he not speaking? What does he know that I do not? What power allows him to wait without fear? And in that wonder, respect is born. The crowd interprets silence as certainty, as strength, as mastery. They assume that if you do not need to speak, it is because your position is already secure. Think of a ruler in council, surrounded by advisors bickering, arguing, pleading their cases. The weak ruler tries to prove his wisdom by speaking constantly, by showing he knows every detail, by inserting himself into every debate. But his words drown him. The advisors see through him. His authority erodes. Now imagine a ruler who listens, who allows the room to fight for his attention, who waits until the end to speak a few measured words. The silence becomes unbearable, until his voice finally breaks it like thunder. That silence, more than his words, is what commands obedience. Silence is feared because it cannot be controlled. Words can be challenged, twisted, ignored. But silence hangs in the air like a shadow. It unsettles the impatient. It forces others to reveal themselves. The one who respects himself enough to remain silent gains an advantage, because in the absence of his words, others expose their weakness. They overspeak, over-explain, overreact. While he remains still, untouchable, unreadable, Machiavelli knew that in politics, as in life, the appearance of control matters more than control itself. Silence is the appearance of control. It suggests you do not need to fight for attention. You already own it. It suggests you do not need to prove your worth. It is already recognized. It suggests you are above the chaos of the moment, unmoved by the noise of the crowd, and people obey what they cannot unsettle. To wield silence, however, requires self-respect, Without it, silence becomes weakness, an empty void mistaken for fear. But when it is rooted in dignity, silence becomes heavy. It presses on those around you, forcing them to consider your presence more carefully than they would if you spoke. The difference is not in the silence itself, but in the self-respect that underlies it. The man who knows his worth does not need constant affirmation. He can sit in silence while others scramble for approval. His silence becomes proof of his authority. Even in personal dealings, silence reshapes power. When insulted, the weak defend themselves immediately, their words tripping over one another as they try to salvage dignity. But the strong often say nothing. They let the silence hang, their eyes steady, their posture unbroken. The insulter grows uncomfortable, realizing that no words can pierce someone who refuses to be moved. The silence becomes a shield, stronger than any reply. When negotiating, silence is often the greatest weapon. The desperate fill the air with offers, with compromises, with pleas. The strong remain still, saying nothing, forcing the other side to reveal more, to concede more, simply to escape the discomfort of silence. Self-respect allows this patience. It allows you to wait while others collapse beneath the pressure of their own words. Even in the smallest interactions, silence commands. When a man of self-respect enters a room and does not rush to speak, all eyes eventually turn to him. The quiet figure draws attention not by force, but by gravity. People want to know what he is thinking, what he will say, what he will decide. His silence creates anticipation, and anticipation creates influence. The world becomes attentive to him, even before he utters a word. This is why silence is not emptiness. It is not weakness. It is the sound of authority that requires no defense. It is the proof that self-respect radiates outward, shaping how others behave without needing constant reminders. For in silence, the world reveals itself, while the man who commands it remains above the noise, untouchable, unshaken, and obeyed. Conclusion: respect is not given. It is seized. And the world does not bend to kindness, excuses, or weakness. It bends only to the man who bends himself first, who shapes his own spirit into steel and demands through his very presence that others acknowledge his worth. You have seen now the cold truth, that self-respect is the root of all power. It is the armor that shields you from manipulation, the weapon that silences your enemies, the throne upon which obedience is built. The man who knows his value does not beg, he does not justify, he does not chase approval. He commands it. Machiavelli taught that appearances rule the world, and the greatest appearance of all is the man who respects himself so deeply that others cannot ignore him. In your discipline, your boundaries, your refusal to bend cheaply, you create a force stronger than words or wealth, the force of unquestioned authority. The weak scatter themselves, but the strong gather themselves. And when a man gathers his respect, the world gathers around him. For the world obeys the one who has already conquered himself.